So much power.
Ele foi o primeiro avião com tecnologia stealth que entrou em território inimigo e fotografou 250 mil quilômetros quadrados da superfície terrestre em uma hora.
You were sitting at the very front of that 107-foot long spear penetrating enemy airspace. You were truly the tip of the sword. If anything went wrong, we would be on the 6 o'clock news.
Postos de Combate revela agora, com o uso de filmes de arquivo e reconstituições em cores, o que já foi um grande segredo: o mundo sigiloso do Blackbird sr71. A primeira aeronave de reconhecimento aéreo foi criada na Primeira Guerra Mundial para fotografar o inimigo e conquistar vantagens táticas. Na Segunda Guerra Mundial, as aeronaves e a tecnologia fotográfica já eram mais sofisticadas e foram vitais para a vitória. Depois da Segunda Guerra, o mundo se dividiu em duas superpotências com ideologias opostas. A Guerra Fria começou e os Estados Unidos queriam saber o que acontecia por trás da cortina de ferro. A América estava desesperada por informações sobre o arsenal nuclear soviético e a possível ameaça de ataques. No início de dezembro de 1954, a tarefa de criar a nova geração de aeronaves de reconhecimento foi dada ao inovador projetista Kelly Johnson e sua equipe do programa de desenvolvimento avançado da Lockheed, conhecida como Skunk Works.
I think Kelly's operation of the Skunk Works was probably unique in aviation industry. To start with, he had a very, very small cadre of people. He handpicked everyone that worked for him. They were swore to ultimate secrecy. There was absolutely no leaks within the system. He was guaranteed of that. He also made it a point to co-locate his engineers and his producers, the people who were building the airplanes, so the engineer could come up with the drawing and he would walk out on the hangar floor and talk to the man who's bending metal.
Can't stress enough the engineers directly with the shop people all the time. And Kelly, when you had a problem, you'd have a meeting and decisions were made right then. He was always very fair. He could be very tough. He was no pussycat, I'll tell you.
A Skunk Works produziu seu primeiro avião em 1955, o U-2. Para evitar os radares soviéticos, o U-2 foi projetado para voar a 23 mil metros de altitude. Em 1956, começaram as missões de reconhecimento aéreo sobre a União Soviética. Mas os modernos sistemas de radar soviéticos eram mais avançados do que se esperava.
When the U-2 flown by the CIA first began their operations over the Soviet Union, they were shocked to discover that the Soviets were tracking them, even on the very first mission.
Todo U-2 que sobrevoasse a União Soviética corria um grande perigo.
The U-2 was being tracked, and that was a great concern to not only to our country, but to Lockheed, who had promised that this airplane would never be seen.
Determinado a criar um avião espião melhor, Kelly Johnson recomeçou do zero. Ele resolveu projetar uma nova aeronave supersônica que voasse mais rápido e mais alto que o U-2, com o mínimo de presença possível nas telas de radar inimigas. Mas em 1º de maio de 1960, um desastre aconteceu. Um U-2 pilotado por Francis Gary Powers foi abatido por um míssil SA-2. Powers sobreviveu e teve um julgamento público que visava humilhar os Estados Unidos e impedi-los de continuar com os voos de reconhecimento. Mas a tensão entre as superpotências aumentava e a necessidade de informações era mais urgente que nunca. O projeto de Kelly para a construção de um aeroplano espião supersônico se tornou prioridade máxima. Para criar uma máquina capaz de operar na velocidade e altitude que Kelly queria, sua equipe teria de superar uma série de obstáculos tecnológicos.
The biggest problem he was going to face, and he knew this up front, was going to be temperature. The temperatures that the aircraft would encounter at those speeds, phenomenal.
Todos concordavam que a fuselagem de alumínio tradicional não aguentaria as condições extremas.
You could not fly an airplane past 2.6 Mach, and you just barely make it then with aluminum, because the airplane had just turned to jelly.
A solução foi construir a fuselagem de titânio. Ele era leve o bastante para subir a mais de 24 mil metros e forte o bastante para suportar as temperaturas geradas em voos de Mach 3.
No one had ever built an airplane out of titanium. So he had to begin from scratch. We didn't even have tools that you could use to develop titanium and to bend it and to shape it and to make an airplane. So we had to start by designing tools. It was a gigantic undertaking.
Criar uma aeronave que voasse à velocidade de Mach 3 já seria difícil, mas o grupo também teria de combinar esse desempenho com a nova tecnologia stealth. Para evitar características que facilitassem seu rastreamento, o avião tinha um formato revolucionário. As asas foram fundidas ao corpo do avião e a superfície alongada da frente da fuselagem tinha a habilidade de defletir ondas de radar. O mesmo acontecia nas barbatanas traseiras, nos cones pontudos das turbinas e a parte inferior quase achatada. Um material especial que absorvia as ondas de radar foi desenvolvido para revertir todas as pontas.
When you look at an sr71, 20% of what you see is composite. You know, it's just unbelievable at that time. And it was developed in our shops. An sr71 was 100 times smaller radar return than an F-14, which is only half as big and was developed 10 years later. So that was a really, truly first airplane specifically designed with stealth in mind.
Em 22 de dezembro de 1964, o sr71 foi rebocado para a pista da fábrica da Lockheed em Burbank. Recoberto por uma tinta de ferrita, substância que absorvia as ondas de radar, o Blackbird era uma máquina com visual extremamente futurista. O piloto de teste da Lockheed, Robert Gilliland, foi o primeiro a pilotá-lo.
When we got going, as a matter of fact, for the actual first flight, it had 383 open items. These are things that are supposed to be working that aren't working. So it was a bare bones type of operation for the first flight. And you might say these kind of things could be dangerous, but there are plenty of other people that would like to have been in my position, I assure you of that.
The exhilaration when we made the first engine run, and they had those afterburners going in there, and that thing is straining against those cables, and I just felt, boy, this is really going to be something.
O voo durou cerca de 1 hora e atingiu 1.600 km por hora. Uma realização fenomenal para um primeiro voo de qualquer avião.
Kelly Johnson was there, and some of his guests were there, and I don't remember who all else was there, but the whole kit and caboodle were very happy, including me.
Parecia que Kelly conseguira criar seu avião espião. Mas será que ele enganaria o radar e conseguiria voar para longe do alcance dos caças e mísseis soviéticos? Voando a uma velocidade superior a Mach 3, a mais de 24 mil metros de altura, o Blackbird era o jato mais veloz e de maior altitude do mundo. Em 1966, a primeira unidade foi entregue à base aérea de Beale, na Califórnia. O primeiro esquadrão de reconhecimento estratégico precisava agora de uma tripulação de elite para pilotá-lo.
Well, my first thought was, I sure hope that I'm selected for the program. I mean, that was ultimate, to get selected for the program.
In order to qualify for the SR-71, you had to be very good at what you were doing thus far in your aviation career. In fact, you had to be pretty much the best at what you did to be considered as a candidate.
Cada Blackbird precisava de 2 tripulantes, o piloto e o RSO, ou o oficial de sistemas de reconhecimento.
It was extremely exciting to just to get signed into Beale Air Force Base and to think that you're going to be flying this airplane. You cannot wait.
Mas as entrevistas e avaliações demoraram uma semana e incluíam um rigoroso exame físico igual ao aplicado a astronautas.
And the first 2 days were physicals, an astronaut physical in a sense, taking an EKG on a treadmill and full body x-rays, just very extensive physical exam. They also wanted to know if you were the kind of person that they could live on the road, because you had to spend a lot of time together. You know, in a sense, it's part of your family. And they wanted to evaluate people to see if they'd be a good member of that family.
O treinamento do piloto começava com muitas horas de voo em um T-38 e no simulador do sr71. As sessões extenuantes no simulador testavam os limites dos candidatos.
They basically made it a grueling experience. They would just give me multiple malfunctions to deal with. In fact, they just keep giving you another problem on top of another problem until you're juggling 5 or 6 or 7 balls at once. And eventually you have to start dropping them. And they would evaluate how you prioritized which ball do you drop.
Após vários meses de treinamento, as tripulações estavam prontas para o primeiro voo. A velocidade e a altitude exigiam proteção especial, como o traje pressurizado de $120 mil.
2 technicians suit you up. You step down into it, you put your arms into it, and it comes up to your back. The boots are separate from the suit, and they're just regular, real combat boots. The gloves are especially handmade for you, and they snap on with little O-rings onto your suit. Then when you put the helmet on, it's quite heavy, and once they snap it down, you hear yourself breathing. For a few moments there, you get some claustrophobia. I did anyway.
The suit was designed to have 100% oxygen in the nasal cavity area, and then compressed air in the rest of the suit, so that if you were to lose cabin pressure at 80,000 feet or above, the nitrogen bubbles in your system would come out and your blood would boil. So you need some kind of an environment around you. That's what the pressure suit provided.
Vestidos, o piloto e o RSO estavam prontos para entrar na aeronave e começar o voo.
There are 3 people that do nothing but strap you into the cockpit. And unlike a lot of aircraft, this cockpit is down sort of in the bowels of the aircraft. You get placed down inside the cockpit and strapped in. And then the canopy is lowered on top of you. You don't even lower it yourself. Someone has to do that for you and lock it down. You're kind of becoming part of the aircraft, and it's becoming part of you.
O combustível era inflamado através de um jato de gás e as turbinas J-58 eram acionadas.
Where it really got impressive is when it starts taxiing out of the hangar. And it's 110 feet long, and so this thing keeps coming out, keeps coming out, keeps coming out, and all of a sudden you realize that's an awesome-looking airplane as it gradually comes out of the hangar.
So here we were looking at an airplane that was going to be going 2,000 miles an hour, and its design was so futuristic. It was like no other airplane that had ever been designed, because it was going to fly in an environment that no other airplane had ever been in.
Tower Aspen 30 is #1 for takeoff.
I'll never forget how it feels to light those afterburners and feel one light before the other one does, and it jerks you pretty hard.
Next thrust.
And it accelerates rather rapidly. Just a matter of seconds, you're hitting 180 knots indicated airspeed, lifting off at 210, making sure you get the gear retracted before it overspeeds at 300 knots. and you keep pulling that nose up to try to achieve the 400-knot climb out. And in less than 2 minutes from brake release, you're pulling out of afterburner, you're level at 24,000 feet. It's quite a ride.
I remember the first time I took the aircraft up to speed and to altitude, I went through Mach 1, and then I approached Mach 2, and it went through Mach 2 without the slightest indication of any problems, and I marveled at that. And then it rolled right on through Mach 3. Of course, none of us had ever been that fast before, but you did all of this effortlessly. And that was the feeling you had, that you had control of so much power on this aircraft that it was almost limitless.
Quando o sr71 entrava em Mach 3, o empuxo potente era seguido de uma explosão de calor, irradiado da superfície negra, que alcançava temperaturas de 600 graus centígrados.
It truly flew through the air like a hot knife through butter. It really did. So it was pointy on every end, but it had elegance. But it was an elegance that was designed for performance.
Após 10 meses de treinamento estafante, as tripulações estavam prontas para a ação. O sobrevoo de áreas secretas em território inimigo testaria os limites tanto das aeronaves quanto de suas tripulações. Em 21 de março de 1968, um sr71 partiu em sua primeira missão decolando da base aeronáutica de Kadena, em Okinawa, no Japão. A Guerra do Vietnã já tinha 5 anos e os Estados Unidos estavam determinados a derrotar o comunismo no Sudeste Asiático. A missão dos tripulantes era coletar informações fotográfica e eletrônica dos inimigos. Eles voaram diariamente sobre regiões onde um simples erro podia lhes custar a vida e provocar um incidente internacional.
In this program, the margin for error was so narrow, almost to nothing, that it really was the pressure of flying the mission flawlessly. So that, because if anything went wrong, we would be on the 6 o'clock news.
As missões eram sempre cuidadosamente planejadas. As tripulações estudavam em detalhes a rota e as áreas que sobrevoariam e informavam-se da capacidade de defesa do inimigo.
Well, we tried to stay well informed about our adversaries' capabilities, about their ability to track our movement, our aircraft, any potential surface-to-air missiles that might be a threat to us, or any aircraft that might be a threat to us during a flight.
3 horas antes, os tripulantes eram examinados e ingeriam uma refeição com alto valor proteico, como filé e ovos. O chefe da missão e sua equipe inspecionavam o aparelho durante várias horas à procura de problemas mecânicos.
Pre-flight on the aircraft starts around midnight. We're saying for a 6 or 7 o'clock launch in the morning. And there's a lot of procedures that you go through. Cameras have to be uploaded. The bays are in the forward section of the chines. And then the cameras was electrically lifted up into it. We always loaded a light load of fuel for the mere fact that it's a lot easier on the airframe, it's a lot easier on the tires, the landing gear, and so forth like that.
There was always excitement in the air, electrifying. Every time you fly the airplane, everybody was keyed up. Everybody did their job and did it extremely well. They took it very, very seriously.
Everybody worked together, and it was a team effort. And everybody knew that they was striving for that one thing, and it was perfection. The SR-71 demanded it because there was no room for error. When you get ready to launch the airplane there, things are happening so fast that you send the airplane off, and of course you're going to be concerned about whether or not it's going to come back. You're constantly thinking whether everything is correct or not, and those questions kind of creep into your mind.
Acima de 18 mil metros, a tripulação interrompia o contato com o controle de tráfego. Só poucas pessoas sabiam o destino final do Blackbird.
The pilot in the SR-71 spent all of his time flying the airplane. The airplane operated on autopilot, that's true, but you had to kind of hand fly the autopilot. It demanded your attention all the time, and so the fellow in the back seat, the reconnaissance systems officer, he handled all of the auxiliary systems.
Sentado no cockpit traseiro, o RSO precisava manter o avião na linha negra, a rota pré-estipulada até o alvo. Ao alcançar território inimigo, ele se concentrava no radar e nos sistemas de defesa, tentando obstruir as comunicações do inimigo no caso de um lançamento de míssil.
We carried the same type of jammer that was used throughout the Vietnam War by all of the fighters and bombers, which attempted to jam the communication between the radar site and the missile itself. Once they began the communication, our indications in the cockpit would go from warning to jamming, and it would be jamming that communication link to the missile.
Mas, às vezes, o inimigo atacava o avião espião com um míssil que não era controlado ou dirigido por radar.
We were coming in off the water, headed inland, and the pilot says, "Hey, Reg, look out your right window." And here is what looks like a telephone pole about 150 yards away that's going just straight up. He said, "Was that close enough?" And I said, "Yeah, that was close enough."
Our main defense, if we were fired upon, was increased speed. And we could increase 100 knots, 200 knots in just a matter of seconds, which is a lot of differential in speed for a missile to cope with.
Ao aproximar-se da área do alvo, o RSO começava a operar o equipamento de vigilância de última geração. As 6 câmeras podiam fotografar 260 mil quilômetros quadrados em 1 hora, gerando imagens tão boas que até a placa de um veículo podia ser lida sem problemas.
The surveying capability of the aircraft was fantastic because you're going in a straight line for 2,000 miles. You could look out as far as the horizon goes, and from horizon to horizon, that's what you could survey.
Os tripulantes que voavam na camada mais alta da atmosfera tinham uma visão única do mundo.
The first thing that you notice that's phenomenal is the change of the sky color. At about 60,000 feet, the sky turns a deep indigo steel blue that is so mesmerizing. You just want to look at it. It's fascinating.
You know, if I flew the aircraft up near the Arctic Circle, and I might actually traverse dawn to dusk and back 2 or 3 times. I've seen the sun rise and set 3 times on a flight, which is very unusual. I mean, we're actually flying faster than the Earth's rotation, so we're outrunning the sun.
Na volta à base, a prioridade era retirar as câmeras, chamadas de sensores, de seus nichos no avião.
Everyone was deeply concerned that their sensor performed as it was designed to do and programmed to do. So there was a lot of serious concern there, and there was a lot of happiness because the plane had made a successful mission and the crews were home.
Os filmes eram então revelados e analisados.
Well, the photo interpreters were a brilliant bunch of young airmen, and they could look at that film and they could spot something had been moved or a new facility was going up. They were great at that. And they would call their supervisors if they saw something of interest, you know, that needed to be flagged and brought to the attention of the intelligence people.
One of the things I enjoyed about flying the Blackbird was knowing that information is power. The information we would gather could very well preclude bombs having to be dropped at all. It could save a lot of people's lives by having the right information at the right time.
Os Blackbirds continuaram entrando em território inimigo e coletando informações preciosas. Mas o bloco comunista continuava muito ativo e a cada dia desenvolvia novas tecnologias. Quanto tempo os Blackbirds continuariam voando em segurança sobre áreas tão perigosas? O maior teste do modelo ocorreu em outubro de 1973. No início dos anos 70, as atenções mundiais voltaram-se para o Oriente Médio. A tensão entre Israel, aliado americano, e seus vizinhos árabes chegava a um ponto explosivo. Em 6 de outubro de 1973, Egito e Síria, aliados dos soviéticos, atacaram Israel e tomaram muito território. Com o envolvimento do Oriente Médio na política da Guerra Fria, a derrota israelense poderia levar a um conflito nuclear. Os soviéticos já tinham no espaço seu satélite Cosmos 596, que lhes dava informações imediatas das frentes de batalha e deixava-os um passo à frente dos americanos. Era a hora do Blackbird entrar em ação. Ele decolaria da Força Aérea Griffiths, em Nova York, e voaria direto para o Oriente Médio. O voo teria 11 horas de duração com 6 reabastecimentos. Nenhum tripulante de Blackbird já participara de uma missão tão longa e complexa.
I flew a 10.5-hour training flight, and I was beat by the time I got out of the airplane. I said, whew, that's about as far as I can fly. But when they said you can fly 11 hours and 20 minutes, you jump up and you say, yes, sir, you know, I'll be happy to do that.
I picked Jim Shelton as the first pilot to fly the mission. I knew he was an extremely reliable, highly qualified, and had done extremely well in all of his training and everything. So I had total confidence that if the mission could be done, that Jim would do it.
A missão teve início em 12 de outubro e foi batizada de Alcance Gigantesco.
We took off from Rome, New York around 1 or 2 in the morning because you want to be over a target area somewhere between 11 and 1 o'clock. This allows you to have some shadows so the photo interpreters can go ahead and judge elevation, but yet get you the best sun position you can have.
Às 10 da manhã, o avião chegara ao segundo ponto de abastecimento, sobre Portugal. Por causa do sigilo da missão, ninguém além da tripulação do cargueiro sabia de sua chegada.
On the way into that particular refueling, the tanker crews said the Portuguese control kept calling out an airplane in relation to the tanker. And the tanker says, you know, we don't see anybody. Of course, they knew it was us. But I'm sure that they could tell on their scope something was happening because the two blips merged for a while, for 20 minutes, and then this one accelerates on.
Jim Shelton aproximou-se do litoral do Egito. Os egípcios estavam bem equipados, pois os soviéticos estavam sempre abastecendo seu arsenal.
Russia was developing the SA-5, which was a missile that would go up, well above your altitude, and come back down at you. And yes, that was a concern.
Com mais de 160 plataformas de lançamento de mísseis, muitas comandadas por soviéticos, e sistemas sofisticados de rastreamento por radar, os egípcios estavam em prontidão, procurando inimigos nos céus.
As soon as we got into range of the Egyptian SAM sites, they started tracking us.
Os egípcios, alertados pela aeronave não identificada que aparecia em seus radares e deduzindo que era israelense ou americana, prepararam-se para lançar seus mísseis terra-ar. 24 mil metros acima deles, viajando a uma velocidade superior a Mach 3, o Blackbird de Jim Shelton tirava milhares de fotos, capturando a extensão e a localização das forças militares egípcias.
You had the radar receiver in the back cockpit. Gary could tell me that, yes, now we're being tracked by some SAM missile. We need to do something. So at that particular point, we would jam, we would speed up.
Quando os mísseis egípcios estavam prontos para ser lançados, o sr71 já ia longe, a caminho de Israel. Mas os israelenses também não sabiam da missão secreta do Blackbird e entraram em alerta máximo.
When we rolled in on the first pass over Israel, my defensive system just lighted up like a pinball machine. And I indicated to my pilot, I got all these indications back here. I said, just, maybe keep your eyes open because it seems like somebody's shooting at us.
Apesar de lançar vários mísseis, os israelenses não conseguiram atingir o suposto inimigo. O Blackbird voltou intacto para os Estados Unidos.
We got everything we were tasked for, got the airplane back, and that's the first time airplane, the sr71, had flown 11 hours and 20 minutes. After we land, the next couple of days, Gary and I get invited to the Pentagon. Admiral Moore, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, wanted to thank us for the work that we had done, and they showed us some photos.
Eram fotos detalhadas que mostravam a quantidade de arsenal israelense destruída no início do conflito.
We were to go ahead and resupply the Israelis with some of their lost equipment. So the photo interpreters are counting the number of tanks that we would be replacing. So it was a very crucial point for the sr71.
It was a very sensitive mission, and there was a lot of pressure to get that first one done. Jim and his backseater nailed them. He got all the targets, and everyone was absolutely elated.
As informações coletadas nas 8 missões seguintes provaram que os israelenses haviam virado o jogo e dominavam a guerra. E com esses dados, os Estados Unidos puderam intermediar um cessar-fogo em 24 de outubro.
I think the sr71 contributed greatly to the resolution of that war. No one knew the airplane could fly that far and perform a mission like that and come back and hand the intelligence people the product.
O Blackbird também quebrou recordes. Em 13 de setembro de 1974, o sr71 de Kelly Johnson cruzou 7 fusos horários indo de Londres a Los Angeles. Uma corrida contra o sol, em apenas 3 horas, 47 minutos e 39 segundos.
For the record-breaking flight, I was over at the FAA Control Center, and the controller is a huge screen, and he said, here's a 747 coming out of Phoenix. And it'd go blip. Blip. It moved about ½ inch or _1 inch. He said, okay, get ready. Here comes the sr71 out of Canada. And it goes, brrrt, and there goes my antenna, brrrt, there goes Idaho. and get ready, boom! And it almost blew us out of the way because he was right overhead. And he was starting to decel, but he managed to blow the windows out of Zaza Gore's house in the Hollywood Hills.
No mesmo ano, o Blackbird fez outro voo recordista, de Nova York a Londres. 52 anos antes, Charles Lindbergh voara aproximadamente a mesma distância em 33 horas. O sr71 fez o percurso em 1 hora, 55 minutos e 42 segundos. Mas o avião logo seria convocado para uma missão muito mais perigosa. Outro inimigo oriental apoiado pelos soviéticos estava em pé de guerra e determinado a humilhar os Estados Unidos. O melhor jeito de fazê-lo seria abater um sr71. A tensão continuava entre os Estados Unidos e boa parte do mundo árabe. Em 1972, o líder da Líbia, coronel Muammar Gaddafi, declarou que ajudava organizações terroristas na Europa e no Oriente Médio. Ele fez várias ameaças aos Estados Unidos e avisou que quem passasse pelo Golfo de Sidra cruzaria uma linha mortal. No início de 1986, o terrorismo atingira níveis inéditos em todo o mundo. A paciência do presidente Reagan estava no fim.
Gaddafi deserves to be treated as a pariah in the world community. We call on our friends in Western Europe and elsewhere to join with us in isolating him. If these steps do not end Gaddafi's terrorism, I promise you that further steps will be taken.
Em 5 de abril de 1986, uma bomba explodiu em uma discoteca de Berlim Ocidental. Entre os 232 mortos, havia 2 militares americanos. Os Estados Unidos encontraram provas irrefutáveis de que o líder líbio, Coronel Gaddafi, estava por trás do atentado. Na base aérea de Mildenhall, na Inglaterra, o piloto de sr71, Brian Shaw, sabia que a retaliação não tardaria.
We knew that something was going on because all of a sudden the Mildenhall base had an extra security arm of guards around it. Our BOQ living quarters had armed guards at the doors. The next thing you knew, every tanker in the Air Force practically was landing at Mildenhall. There were new airplanes on the ramp that you hadn't seen before. And it was no secret to every Brit aircraft spotter out there that there was something going on.
O governo britânico permitiu que os Estados Unidos usassem as bases inglesas para iniciar as missões. Às 9h30 da manhã de 14 de abril, os tripulantes do sr71 foram convocados para uma reunião secreta. Eles foram informados que a 48ª ala de caças táticos atacaria alvos na Líbia dali a algumas horas.
When we heard the words, this morning at 2 a.m. the F-111s are launching, we were a little surprised that, well, this is for real, it's happening.
A missão do Blackbird era registrar o resultado dos ataques aéreos a Trípoli e Benghazi. Naquela noite, os F-111 levantaram voo.
So when we're trying to sleep, in the middle of the night, you're awakened by the roar of F-111s taking off. Listening to that, it was quite serious at that time because we knew maybe some of those people wouldn't come back.
Quando as tripulações dos Blackbird se preparavam para suas missões, os F-111 já bombardeavam a Líbia.
My fellow Americans, at 7 o'clock this evening, Eastern Time, air and naval forces of the United States launched a series of strikes against the headquarters, terrorist facilities, and military assets that support Muammar Gaddafi's subversive activities. Today, we have done what we had to do. If necessary, we shall do it again.
The 111s had a number of targets to take out missile defenses, sites and things, but also all the terrorist training camps, and to really hit Gaddafi's headquarters, basically, to really show him that we're going to come right into his backyard. Our job was to come and assess everything that was done, gather pictures and target data for maybe succeeding strikes.
Como os Blackbirds surgiam logo após um bombardeio, suas tripulações encontravam a sofisticada defesa aérea libanesa em alerta total e ansiosa para retaliar.
We were subsonic uplands and getting ready to get to the tanker, and we saw the string of F-111s coming back. And my backseater, Walter, was counting the planes as they came back and passed us, and he came up one short. And he knew that somebody had not made it home, and we were very sad in the cockpit at that time before we even started it. We had lost an entire crew, but yet it gave us more resolve.
Depois de reabastecer e já viajando a velocidade supersônica, eles se aproximaram do Golfo de Sidra e de seu alvo em território líbio.
We're doing over 2,000 miles an hour at this point, and we were like a speeding bullet, except faster. And we had crossed the line of death with impunity.
Mas os libaneses, equipados com os mísseis de longo alcance mais sofisticados dos soviéticos, ainda eram uma grande ameaça aos Blackbirds.
At that time, Walter started picking up some missile signals. He got 2 indications and then actually got a launch indication. And we had a big decision to make where we were running into the target area before we made the turn. Do we continue to that point where Gaddafi's headquarters were, or do we make a turn away now to save ourselves from the missiles? And our decision was to push the throttles forward. We thought in 14 seconds we can beat that missile to that point and then make the turn. Made the turn, went feet wet, got to the coast, and I will tell you, that was probably the fastest I've ever seen the SR-71 fly.
Eles foram mais rápidos que o míssil, tiraram as fotos e afastaram-se da zona de perigo.
Walt said, "Okay, you can pull it back now." My hand was still locked in the forward position there. We were seeing Mach numbers that were a little scary, that we had not seen before, and the jet did it effortlessly.
As fotos indicaram que a missão de bombardeio fora um sucesso e o comando americano decidiu não haver mais necessidade de bombardear a Líbia e arriscar mais vidas de pilotos americanos.
We brought back the confirmation of to whether we needed to go in again or not, what we had really done, where their defenses were, what they really had. But we made a statement to Gaddafi, and if you'll notice, you remember, you didn't hear a lot from him for a long time after that.
Mas apesar do sucesso dos Blackbirds na Líbia, seus dias estavam contados. No final da década de 80, os militares concluíram que o programa era custoso demais e cancelou sua operação. Dali em diante, a vigilância americana seria feita por satélites.
The reason that was given was that it was too expensive. Well, it's reconnaissance. That's sometimes that can be very expensive. And if you don't have reconnaissance, you're pretty blinded. And now they like to say that the satellites can do it all. And satellites can do a great deal, and they're magnificent capabilities. But there are things they can't do, and there are things that are unique that only the SR-71 can do.
Em 20 de dezembro de 1989, o SR-71 fez sua última decolagem da fábrica da Lockheed, em Burbank, homenageando todos que trabalharam com o excepcional avião. Kelly Johnson estava lá para se despedir de sua maior criação.
You can't say enough about Kelly Johnson himself. You know, he was an absolute aeronautical genius. Working for Lockheed, I think he's made the greatest aircraft that ever existed. There's just something about the sleek SR-71 that makes it in a class of one. There is no other.
Impressionante até o fim, o aeroplano quebrou 4 recordes internacionais de velocidade no trajeto para o Smithsonian Air and Space Museum.
People love a winner. They love when someone is the best in their field. This aircraft was the best in its field. It was the prime speed machine of the world. Every speed and altitude record that it set, it holds to this day.
O SR-71 Blackbird serviu a 6 presidentes e participou de várias guerras. Apesar de ter sofrido mais de 4.000 ataques, nenhuma unidade foi abatida por fogo inimigo.
It is the only operational airplane in the history of the American Air Force in which no Air Force crew members were ever killed. That's a record that no other airplane has. And when you consider the environment in which it flew, the speed, the altitude, the temperatures, that's a real credit to Kelly Johnson.